Great news! You've received an offer to lease your investment property. But is that prospective candidate who they say they are, or are they a con artist running a scam? Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Last Honest Realtor podcast. I'm your host, David Fleming. Thank you so much for joining me here today as we take a deep dive into a couple of recent incidents where we successfully sniffed out two scams from two scammers who were looking to rent properties we had listed for sale. Now, unfortunately, this is extremely common in our marketplace. And I have a saying, and this goes for all things, whether it is real estate related or whether it's the person calling you on the phone. You don't need to understand the scam to know that it is a scam. And what I mean by that is that years ago, I had a luxury property listed for lease for $10,000 a month, and we received an offer. Now that offer, had it gone through and had those people provided us with first and last month's rent of $20,000, well, you say it can't be a scam because they were going to give us 20,000 real dollars. That's the thing about scams. People that run scams, they're smarter than us, at least when it comes to that. Now, in reality, those people's scam was probably that they would then try to release it 30 times at $10,000 a month. Regardless, you don't need to understand what the scam is to realize that it is a scam. Point is, you can't try to figure it out. Now, recently, we had two exceptional cases, and I want to go through those today to show you exactly how we figured it out. Now, unfortunately, this comes with the caveat of saying that we live in a province here in Ontario where the Landlord and Tenant Board overwhelmingly favors tenants. Now, I say unfortunately. There are tenant advocate groups and people that are going to find this video and they're going to absolutely hate on me, but it's true. You cannot get rid of a tenant once they're in place, even if they don't pay rent. Now, here's an article. This one stands out in my mind. It's from February of 2023. It's somewhat dated. The headline reads, "This GTA condo owner says he's struggling to make ends meet as the tenant won't pay $20,000 in rent." After 6 months after the hearing, there's no order from the Landlord and Tenant Board to evict the tenant. A Mississauga landlord says he's fed up with the bureaucratic gridlock that's held up an eviction for 6 months while his tenant, who owes him $20,000, is living rent-free in his condo. Joe Roberto says he was told at the LTB hearing in August, this would be 2022, that he would be issued an eviction order, which he could then give to his delinquent tenant. She hasn't paid rent in more than a year, Roberto says, leaving him to pay for the condo's mortgage, maintenance fees, and property taxes on top of his own household expenses. "I don't sleep at night. I don't eat," said Roberto, who's a home inspector and a married father of two. Roberto said the tenant moved in 2020 and by October of 2021 had stopped paying rent. He had an LTB hearing in late August 2022, at which time he says he was told verbally by the adjudicator that he would be issued an eviction. 6 months later, that has not happened, despite daily calls and emails to the LTB. Now, some people are going to hear this or read that and they'll say, good, serves him right. I don't understand the world that we live in today. That is a law-abiding, hardworking, tax-paying citizen who has an investment property and someone is living in there and not paying rent. But there are a lot of people that are going to say serves him right. Houses are for living in, not renting. I can't get behind any of that. What I can do today is tell you that my job as a real estate agent is to make sure that con artists and crooks don't get into these properties that we represent on behalf of clients. Tangent, like I said, couldn't avoid it. So last week I told a real estate agent, and I quote, "I start out every review by assuming the application is fraudulent, and I go from there." And this real estate agent said to me, "Oh, that's a great way to go through life." But ironically, the application was fraudulent, so I wasn't exactly wrong. And folks, I might be overstating this, but when I do receive an application on an offer to lease, I start out by saying, okay, this is fake. Let's work backwards from there. So take a step back here. What do we do to qualify tenants? Well, we get credit checks. Now, these can be faked. They can be scanned. They can be one page. We use Equifax. We use TransUnion. Sometimes there's companies you've never heard of. Employment letters. Now, anyone can right-click Save As. Petro-Canada. I just thought of that. Right-click Save As the logo. Then I'm going to go into MS Word and I'm going to pop that in the top and I'm going to write a letter and at the bottom I'm going to sign it. You know what? I might even go to Petro-Canada and find somebody in HR and put their name and contact info, thinking that perhaps the real estate agent or the landlord won't call them. Anyone can fake an employment letter. Pay stubs. Well, those can be typed out. They can be faked. Identification. Now, I don't know if it's legal to ask for it. I actually don't care, but I do ask for multiple types of identification. And you can look up any Ontario driver's license online to see if it's real. Go to LinkedIn, go to Facebook, go to Instagram, any other social media site, Google the person, go to Canly and search their name for lawsuits. Go to the Canadian Business Registry, because I find the scams are always these made up tech or construction or landscaping companies. Then there's businesses like Front Lobby who do independent credit checks. So here are the two stories I want to tell today, guys. Last week I received an application. The candidate is a 31-year-old male. Well, that's great, because the stereotype of, I don't want to rent to a guy in his 20s, 31's the perfect age, right? See how I come into this already assuming it's a scam? Now, he's renting a 2-bed, 2-bath condo for $4,000 a month. Why does a single guy need all that space? It's fine. Don't assume the worst. Now, his credit report is attached. He has an 825 credit score. That's really, really high. So it's amazing, or it's questionable. He has an income of $295,000, and he is the CFO of a tech company. All right. So I get an employment letter, and the employment letter is signed not by Bob Smith. It says XYZ Tech Co. Now, that's obviously not the name of it. But when you get an employment letter, it should be signed from Marianne Jones of Petro-Canada's HR department. This one said, signed XYZ Tech Co. All right. You need the name of a person. Otherwise, in my opinion, this is completely worthless. Now, the employment letter itself is worthless, but in this case, it's signed name of company. Now, the signature says, if you require any additional information, please call our HR specialist, gives a phone number and an email. And again, anyone can fake that. We will come back to it. Now, the credit report. The credit report was scanned. That's always a red flag to me. When you download a credit report, it is given to you in a PDF. Now, 15 years ago, I'm sure you had paper and you needed to scan it somehow. Although if you had it on paper, it meant you printed it from somewhere. So at one point, it would have been a PDF. When you get a scanned credit report, I feel like, and I'm going to use an analogy here because I've said I collect vintage hockey cards. When people were counterfeiting cards in the 80s, they would make them brand new and then they would fray the edges to make them look like, these are old cards. And I assume it comes to currency or artwork or anything else, or even like an old first edition book or something. You need to fray it. You need to mess it up a little bit to make it look like it's dated. When you're scanning a credit report, you're trying to take away that level of quality. And it was also only one page. A credit report is 15 pages. So we'll come back to that as well. Now, the pay stubs, they looked very fishy. They were also made to seem old. But why? Theoretically, this is a digital copy. For those of you that aren't necessarily as old as me, we used to get a check, and on the back, you rip it off. I worked at the gas station in 1998, and I got a check, and on the back, there was a stub. And you kept those stubs. We actually didn't know why, but we kept them. This looked like a scan of a stub, which was a bit fishy to me. Now, the last place of residence, it said that he lived at 10 Yonge Street in Unit X. We'll come back to that as well. LinkedIn, last but not least, he's on there and the company looks legit, but he's been there a while. It says that he has been the CFO of the company for 13 years. We'll come back to that as well. So, how did this unravel? Let's start with the LinkedIn. It says he's been there 13 years and 6 months. He's 31 years old. Now, maybe he started this company when he was 18 years old. Maybe he never had another job. But on his LinkedIn, there were no jobs. It said that he had been there for 13 years and 6 months, which would mean that he started this company when he was 18. But his employment letter said he started there in December of 2019. Could be a coincidence. Could be sloppy. I don't know. But that was a red flag. Now, he's never had another job according to LinkedIn. There's no school listed. He could be a savant. He could be tech savvy. He could have been, the kid building computers in his room. Fine, whatever. Let's continue. Because some of you might say this all sounds circumstantial. At the end of the day, where there's smoke, there's fire. If you add up 40 circumstantial things, you might not be able to prove that this is a fraud, but you don't need to prove it. You just need to prove it to yourself that this is high risk. So I called the agent. And in casual conversation, you get people talking, how you doing, how you find the market out there, and you sort of throw things out there. And I said, so where's he living now? Did you get him the place? And the agent said, yeah, no, I put him in there. I can't remember. It was a few years ago. Well, here's the thing. I looked up the last time that property was leased. This agent was not listed on MLS as the co-op agent, and the dates didn't line up. It said that he had been there for 2 years. This property was last leased on MLS 3 years ago by somebody else. And again, circumstantial. He could have leased it offline, right? Could have been a sublease. I don't know. But it starts to unravel from there. Now, the pay stubs. This is going to sound really silly, but I love the application Paint. You know Paint? Paint is the most basic thing that Windows has ever invented. And it's not for painting. It's not for drawing. I have used this to resize and screenshot my images on Toronto Realty blog since I started in 2007. I also shouldn't admit this, but occasionally, because I'm a paint expert, when I find a floor plan online and it's got like a watermark, I can remove it. I'm that good. But when you go into Paint and you zoom in, and I know you guys are gonna be like, why don't you name any one of the graphic tools? Because they're, this one's free. And I'm a paint expert. Put that on my resume. When you go into something as a JPEG and you zoom right into the individual pixels, I looked at this, guys, and I know this is gonna sound really ridiculous. I could tell based on all of the times that I've repixelated something in Paint that this looks dodgy. That's the pay stub. So I'm on the phone with the agent and I ask the credit report, how come it's only one page? And he says, I think that's all it gave them. Let me check. Now, if you're a real estate agent and you've done any lease in your entire life, you know that if it's through TransUnion or Equifax, you probably, and real estate agents who specialize in leases, this is old hat to them. That's an old saying that I just used. This is old hat to them. They know it's a 14-page document. And he says, I think that's all it gave them. Let me check. So it's starting to add up. But then I got to the employment letter. Now, remember it said call the HR specialist. That sounds made up. And it's a 647 number. Listen, 647 number, fine. It could be his mother. She could be working there. She could be the HR specialist. It could be Becky, who works from home in Milton, and she's got a 647 area code. Not everyone has a 416. But I call it, and it goes right to a voicemail box. It says, no one's available to take your call. Please leave a message. So I think, okay, maybe someone's on the subway. I call it again an hour later, and 2 hours after that. Every time I call, it goes to the voicemail box. So this is a number for an HR specialist, apparently, that is set up to go to a voicemail box. At this point, I'm pretty sure this is a scam, but I really wanted to know. So I left a message. Someone calls me back like 6 minutes later from private number, and I said, hey, I'm calling on behalf of so-and-so. I just wanted to confirm some details. Now, this person is like way too accommodating, way too happy. So I say to them, this person has been at the company since 2017 and is the CEO, has an income of $395,000. And this person says, yep, that's all good. That's correct. I'm happy to email you any more documentation to this effect. Well, listen, all three of those things were incorrect because the letter I had said 2018, said CFO, and said $295,000. I changed all three of those things in my phone call. And the person on the phone said that they were all correct. So last but not least, guys, the social media check. There's no Instagram account for this person, which I think is weird for somebody that's apparently in tech. But then I find an old Facebook page, which has not been updated since 2018. And it's just nonstop photos of a guy posing in front of luxury cars. Let's be judgmental. So unlike me. A person that is taking nonstop photos of themselves in front of luxury cars. Successful people don't do that. I mean, some do, yes. But there's that saying between like old money and new money. The guy, and some of you are probably laughing at this, you might have like a friend that's always doing this, right? And I'm really going to typecast. And listen, I'm 45. When I was a young person, I probably wouldn't have done that. But I understand what it's like to be that young person that wants to show off, whether you're trying to impress your friends or you're trying to attract girls. If it's business, you're trying to look successful. But the person that's taking photos in front of a Lamborghini, in front of a Mercedes, in front of a, I don't know, some souped up Audi with a really loud muffler that people are like, wow, that's impressive. I don't know anything about cars. That guy's either running a scam or it's completely real and he's, gosh, I don't want to use the word. What would women refer to that guy as? Kind of like a douche. I apologize. That was the word that somebody gave me off camera, so I'm going to blame them. But we're being judgmental. If this person is real, it's a dick. That guy's he's like a young, cocky, arrogant, taking photos in front of a luxury car. Or this Facebook profile hasn't been updated in 7 years. And at one point, this profile was there to show a pattern of success. New age success, because as I said, the really successful people don't take photos of themselves standing on the hood of a Lamborghini. So you add all this up. There's absolutely no question this is fraudulent in my mind. The agent is complicit. They have a one-page credit report that's scanned. They have pay stubs that when I went into Paint, I could tell that they were doctored. The agent said he leased him his last place at 10 Young, and he didn't. Not that I could tell. His LinkedIn profile says that he basically has been at this company since he was 18 years old, but the LinkedIn profile says that he's been there for 13 years, 6 months, and the employment letter says he's been there since, 2018? I call the HR specialist from the voicemail box that's set up for the company that he apparently is the CFO of, that has no HR specialist and it just says the name of the company. That person calls me back and then they confirm 3 incorrect things that I had given them. Very circumstantial, but you know what? I don't care. Maybe it's all real. I'm positive it's not. But at the end of the day, when you're a landlord or you're a real estate agent representing one, your job is to work with the balance of probabilities. And there's just no reason to take this on. Now, my next case is even more fun. This is wild, okay? When you get to this piece of paper over here, man, the amount of diligence that went into this was such an incredible gotcha. So I've got a $6,000 per month luxury townhouse in Oakville. I get an application from 2 young people, 29 and 30. And I think we called them, where are my notes here? I always change the names, right? Anyways, we'll get to that. Peter, I think I went for a very common name. Now, Peter works as a machine operator for a construction company, and he makes $105,000 a year. Good for you, Peter. And Becky, she works for an in-home care provider, and she makes $94,000 per year. Now, right off the bat, this was fishy to me. Why? Because they had never seen the property. Who rents a property sight unseen? And again, you don't have to understand what the scam is. You just have to suss it out. So I called the real estate agent and I said to him, hey, I don't have a record of you showing the property. And he said, no, we didn't take a look at it. And I said, do you mind if I ask why? And he said, things are moving so quickly right now, we didn't want to miss out. We've missed out on a couple of other really good ones and we didn't want to miss out on yours. But the photos look amazing. This property's been listed for 28 days. That argument really doesn't hold water. You didn't want to miss out on it. You didn't want it to lease for somebody else, but it's been on the market for 28 days. Now, his employer is in Kitchener and her employer is in Grimsby. Now, this is an Oakville townhouse, so it's not crazy, but this requires a little bit of clarification. None of them are on social media. Now, it's not uncommon. I wish none of us were on social media. Right now that I'm old, I can be like, it's ruining the world. But none of them are on social media. And that's always a bit of a red flag for me. Most people have an Instagram, a Facebook, they have something. But when you Google somebody and you cannot find anything about them, that's either really amazing and good for them, or it's fishy. Now, there's zero trace of her. Now, she works in healthcare. There should be some article somewhere from, I don't know, her nursing school, a professional designation somewhere. I mean, you think about Googling some random person and you find a photo of them on the volleyball team at Western University from 2011. You're usually going to find something on these people. But a lot of con artists are absolute ghosts. Or in the case of the last guy, they have a previous con from 2018 where they're the successful guy posing in front of Mercedes. So I call the agent and I ask him a few questions. I get him talking. I always try to be very conversational. And I said, so why are they renting this place in Oakville? Like, they work in Kitchener and Grimsby. Are you ready for this? This is such a gotcha. He said they work from home most of the time. What did I say that Peter does for work? He's a machine operator. So I said to the agent, how does Peter operate machinery from home? Give me a reason, guys. Maybe it's like, he's got like a cool little Game Boy Oh my God, that's how old I am. I don't know what's the cool PlayStation effect. The old joystick from the 1980s. And he's like, can you do that? No, you can't. He's a machine operator that works in Grimsby at a construction site, and he's working from home. The agent says, I think he's in management at some level. That's not what the letter says. The letter says he's a machine operator, and you're telling me he's in management. He said, well, I think he manages the other machine operators. Listen, guys, there could be a very good explanation for this. It could be a terrible mix-up, or it's just one part of the entire circumstantial web that we are unweaving. Now, I called his supervisor, and the supervisor said, I've never actually met Peter. So if it was a scam, the supervisor would have been like, oh yeah, no, Peter, I met him. He's a great guy. But for him to say he's never met him, not once ever, the guy's worked there for 8 years. You haven't met him at a meeting, at an office Christmas party, at some tug of war retreat in the woods for team building. They still do that? I did that at Celestica in 2001. And I think that obviously here, as I said, if you had a con artist, they would be backing him. But it's still fishy. You've never met this person. So I called the past landlord, and it went to voicemail. Now I Googled the phone number and added the words real estate. And guess what? This cell phone number belongs to a real estate agent from Niagara Falls. The name of that person is not the name of the person listed as the landlord on the application. Now, it could be the property owner, it could be a property manager, circumstantial. But here comes the hammer. I'm getting out the paper, guys. This is so fun. I have to give credit to my client, who is a tax accountant. So when we got their documents, they pored over them, and we looked at their pay stubs. My client says to me, like, this is the definition of a smoking gun. My client says to me, the first thing I notice is that Peter and Becky have the exact same pay period. That could happen, obviously. Maybe the two businesses have the same pay periods. No big deal. They were both paid on January 1st. Anyone? Bueller? It's a Ferris Bueller reference. January 1st is a holiday. And under the Employment Standards Act, if a pay period falls on a holiday, you have to pay the individual before the holiday. I would also say that banks are closed on statutory holidays. Not impossible, not impossible. E-transfer, right? Electric funds transfer. Maybe this company just happens to pay people on holidays. Exceptionally unlikely, because if they're a real company, they adhere to the Employment Standards Act. Now, I'm going to throw some numbers at you. Based on the pay stubs, it would seem they both earn around $100,000. Now, remember we said $105,000 and $94,000 respectively. For Shannon, I changed the name here. I think I said Becky. Shannon Becky. I doubt that their taxes paid year to date are only $47.11 and $98.29 respectively. Shannon's should be closer to $10,000 and Peter's should be closer to $12,000. That's what happens when you make up numbers. You're not a tax accountant. Your numbers don't make any sense. Now, guys, if my client wasn't a tax accountant, we wouldn't have all this wonderful stuff. But boy, oh boy, it's like, did you break into the wrong house? Okay, think Pulp Fiction there. Second, it seems odd that Shannon/Becky, those aren't the real names, they're just fake names I made up, has contributed more in CPP than Peter, but earns less than he does. Yes, I would say that that's exceptionally odd, wouldn't you? Third, Peter's exemption, federal and provincial, are wrong. The 11,865 in 2023, it's 12,747 that is the minimum under law, and you can't be lower. Okay? As for vacation accruals, it does seem odd that they're full-time and there are no balances. So guys, the pay stubs that they gave literally look like they're made in Excel because they likely were. So as I said, I do not have a tax accounting background. I never would have deduced this, but luckily my client happened to be a tax accountant and dug into this. So as I said, smoking gun, the idea that they have the identical pay periods, coincidental, But if you're two con artists, you quickly just draw it up in Excel, copy and paste. The fact that they were paid on January 1st when you're not allowed to do that under the Employment Standards Act, you know what? This could be a really poorly run business. Both of their employers are poorly run businesses. And then all this stuff about their year-to-date CPP, all the fun stuff that you guys might have potentially tuned out. This is stuff that you would only know if you happen to be a CFA or a tax accountant. But for the con artist, they're just drawing this up and throwing some random numbers in there. But it's funny because if you really were to look at it, and one note in here was that Shannon has contributed more in CPP than Peter, but earns less than he does. That makes absolutely no sense. And yet none of us, myself included, would have looked at that and come to that conclusion. So good on these guys for sussing that out. At the end of the day, there could be very real reasons for every single thing that I have laid out. But on the balance of probabilities, both of these applications were fraudulent. Now, the one last part of this, and I hate to say this because it's going to give real estate agents a bad name, but there are bad seeds in every single industry. Real estate is no different. Neither of these agents called me back. I approached both of them with my concerns. Both of them were like, yeah, okay, you know what? Let me look into this. Neither of them called me back. So again, you might say, David, they're probably embarrassed. You know, they probably didn't know they were working for con artists, or potentially they both got caught. And I know that the one guy, I could just tell. Sometimes you just know. Oh, there was one more thing. One of these companies had a website. This is kind of funny. And I was kind of tooling around on it. Anyone can build a fake website. And you know what? Maybe the company is real and he just lied and said he worked there. But there was a photo of a guy and it said, with over 35 years of experience. And this guy maybe was 40. So did he start operating the heavy machinery at age 5? I mean, I'm not talking about the Tonka truck or that cool digger thing that they have in parks, which sometimes when my son's not using it, I jump on because we all have that inner child. But seriously though, guys, maybe it was an error on the website, but all this adds up to say something's not right. And you really, really have to protect yourself in this market because, as I said, if you put a tenant in place and say they are real, say you just have someone that feels like being a jerk and you put them in there, they say, I'm not paying my rent. What do you do from there? They have to be in arrears. You have to go through the process. You have to go to landlord-tenant board. And then you have to show the landlord-tenant board this person's not paying their rent. And in case it's not obvious, my political opinions and all things are slightly right of center. I would say that the landlord-tenant board is there to find a way to side with the tenant. And there is absolutely no sympathy for the landlord. When the tenant's not paying their rent, the first thing they'll do is say, hey, can you pay your rent? I mean, I don't know that these people are just going to say, okay, here's the last 10 months of rent, but it's not automatic. And as we saw with this example over here with this gentleman, the home inspector, even though you've gone through the LTB, 6 months after the hearing, there's no order for eviction from the landlord-tenant board. And like full transparency, like I know this guy. The fact that I pulled this article is because he's a home inspector that, 15 years ago, I used to run into all the time out there. And in 2023, I saw this article and I saw his name and I thought, oh my God, now you're putting a name and a face to it. And I made the point earlier about how some people are like, I have no sympathy for them. I have no sympathy, right? Law-abiding, hardworking, tax-paying citizen. And I believe in right and wrong. And then you have somebody that's not paying their rent. And so I also understand the other side of the argument, which is what are we going to do with this person? If this person has fallen on hard times and can't pay their rent, we can't throw them out on the street. I mean, don't you have to? Because they're breaking the law? Sorry, not sorry. But the counter argument has become, if someone can afford to own an investment property, they can afford to absorb the loss. This guy's like sleeping in his car. Literally, metaphorically. There was another one I was going to pull today where someone said that they couldn't get into their own house and they're sleeping in their car. I'll save that one for another time. So we can talk at great length about the issues in the rental market, the issues with the landlord-tenant board. I mean, these are societal issues, to be perfectly honest with you. We can bring this back full circle and talk about we need more affordable housing in this country. We can talk about how to do that. My job today is to scare you and warn you and say that not only does this happen, but there's a large segment of society that is trying to justify it and make it okay, which I think is wrong because I do believe in right and wrong. And I do think that someone stiffing a landlord for 10 months is exceptionally wrong. We have to understand that. So when you have an offer to lease on your property, and God forbid you're doing this on your own, and I've heard it. I've seen comments on YouTube. I've seen comments and articles out there about the hot rental market, and the word agent appears, and people go into the comments section. They say, why do we need agents for rentals? I get it. Those people think agents are driving up the price, or they just don't like the real estate agent douche effect of like you go to Instagram and it's some young sockless realtor. To understand the reference, you have to hear my other podcasts about young sockless realtors. It was more a meme about how they dress, but they're not the most likable. And I understand that. I understand the idea of why are agents involved in rentals now? I've just showed you why you need them involved. When my car breaks down on the side of the road, I'm not going to crawl underneath it, get out a jack and change the tire. I believe in specialization. There is enough fraud out there that it necessitates an expert to work on your behalf. Having said that, some agents don't check. I've been in this business for 21 years and I've never had a con artist. But about 8 years ago, someone that worked with me did. They put someone in that unit who then advertised it online as a smash pad. I don't even know what that is. I thought I did, but no, that's something else. And basically they said, come here, party, make a mess, don't clean it up. And that was like a business model. And then I looked into it and everything was fake. Their pay stubs, their references, everything was fake. And the buyer agent or the agent for this person was a very prominent, well-known downtown real estate condo agent. And I called the person, took no responsibility whatsoever. It's always someone else's fault. And it took those clients a year to get that person out, even though the police were called every weekend. And that individual is long gone from this company, but that's the only, and that wasn't our client. That was, somebody that worked with us. That's the only instance I've ever had in 21 years, but it happens. And it's never happened to me, knock on wood. This is not wood. But it's because we're diligent, and it's because this is what we do. And the other thing is, guys, I'll sum this up in a moment. I once had someone say to me, it's really hard to run an investment property if I have to pay you a month's rent to find me a tenant. Now, the month's rent, half of it goes to the brokerage. And you're not going to cry poor for me, but I can tell you that the amount of time that goes into this, we absolutely do not make any money on rentals. And I would say that it's a lost leader for us. The amount of time that goes into this, the amount of hours it takes to put the property up, to go through references, multiple applications, going to the property, setting things up, booking appointments. You need to do this, absolutely, as a landlord. And if you do it on your own, be as diligent as I have just showed you today. These are real scams. These are real documents that I've printed and gone through, changing Becky to Shannon and whatnot. But it happens out there, and it is incredibly scary. Best analogy I can give you is, I do not change my own tire on the side of the road. I believe in specialization, and I believe that everybody, if you're not going to hire an agent, then you've got to basically take a course in how to suss out these scams. So guys, that was a quick one today, but it was a fun one, at least I think. Seriously though, the smoking gun, the pay periods, that was awesome. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you have any questions on the rental market or anything like this, you want to hear more stories about the rental scams, I've done a lot on Toronto Realty blog. Feel free to go take a look at it. If you're watching on YouTube, feel free to drop me a comment. I always love reading those, even if they're negative or downright nasty, but those are fun too. And guys, we'll catch you here next time on the Last Honest Realtor.